The air was immediately filled with the acrid smell of burnt electronics. A continuous flurry of dizzying sparks flared out of every exposed console on the bridge, followed up by the strobed flashing of 100 different monitors and screens that came close to overwhelming the light-canceling effects of my goggles. A symphony of alarm bells and sirens joined the ceaseless assault on my senses. Automated voices of warnings, meant for a crew 43,000 years dead. It all ended with a sudden explosion of white that I knew was our death. Yet fate wasn't so kind to me as to offer me the sweet relief of death just yet. As the sudden shock to my senses subsided, revealing that the white that had blanketed my field of view was not the vast endless sea of fluffy white clouds of the great beyond, but instead, do not breathe in the fire foam. Whatever you do, do not breathe it in. It was but another instrument in this orchestra of madness. I simply stood there, too shocked to move, and too incredulous to even speak, as all I could see in this great expanse of foam was a humanoid shape that waded through it, its face lighting up the now darkened room with facial expressions that bordered on parody. "I assume we aren't dead," I announced sarcastically. No, we aren't," Ver replied almost immediately, as he wiped off most of the foam from one of the computers and began fiddling with its consoles. "Can't you just interface with the ship's computer?" "Actually, yep, sorry, force of habit." With the immediate fear of my untimely demise pushed aside, my thoughts now shifted towards more pressing concerns. Did we enter hyperspace? Where the hell are we now? Yeah, we did. And we're here. We've arrived. I stared down the robot, my eye slits narrowing. Ver, can we please put the jokes aside? I'm not joking, just look out the window. It wiped off a good chunk of foam from one of the viewports. Look at the constellations, we're here. A small HUD superimposed itself on the glass, wherever I looked, and indeed, if the ship's NAV computer was any indication, we had in fact arrived. But how? The signal was 1,400 light-years away. Are you saying we jumped that distance in a fraction of a second? 32 seconds actually. Pretty poor job if you ask me. The manufacturer's specs say that this thing can traverse 1,000 light-years in 12 seconds. The years must have taken a toll on it. I stared at Ver with genuine disbelief, to which the robot seemed to finally register the significance of this revelation. I assume your kind uses hyperdrives exclusively? That, and warp, are the only two methods of faster-than-light travel, yes? Well, that explains it. To sum it up quickly, this beast has warp, hyperspace, and jump drive capabilities. I just happened to have chosen the latter, since we were in a hurry. He pointed to a barely noticeable speck in the expanse of space, using telescopic magnification to zoom in, as the HUD revealed a strange satellite, drifting aimlessly through dark space. And because the coordinates sent us here, in the middle of nowhere, we didn't really have to worry about running the risk of tunneling into a sun, or a planet, or something. The issue is, while it's fast, it has a standard arrival deviation of a good 1 to 2 light hours. So we still have to turtle our way towards the thing on sublight. Thankfully, that should take about an hour, so. Attention, jump drive activation successful. Attention, one Vannerin-compatible meal order is complete. We can get you something to eat and drink before we arrive. With a hesitant nod, and the arrival of an automated cleanup crew consisting of a few dozen disc-shaped automatons, we left the bridge for what I assumed was the general dine-in quarters. The sheer scale of the shift had once again spelled a certain level of cognitive dissonance in my frazzled mind. With a ship this large, I had assumed whatever dine-in quarters existed would be designed to accommodate an equally large number of officers and crew. Yet the size of the space we had just entered looked as if it could barely accommodate 100 people. Immense consideration had clearly been taken in ensuring comfort over practicality. Tables being set apart from one another, maximizing individual space over collective density. Padded and upholstered chairs taking the place of efficient benches and stools. Potted plants and well-appointed works of art complemented the ceramic and wood-like paneling that honestly made me feel as if I'd entered some sort of a grand saloon, and not the dine-in quarters of a ship. To add insult to the injury that was my preconceived worldview, the whole room was carved out of 2 entire decks worth of space. Looking up, I could see an entire outcropping above, connected by two modest staircases. I could just barely make out even more plush seating up there, this time in the form of armchairs and couches, all clustered around a bar, all facing towards the most ridiculous aspect of this whole room. A floor-to-ceiling window that gave an unparalleled view of the endless expanse of space. It was honestly unnerving at first, for no Vanaran ship on record had even dared to implement a transparent screen even a fraction of this size. There was only one explanation for this, one that could make some modicum of sense. Why are your officers' dining accommodations this grand? Does humanity have some sort of a strict aristocratic tradition? Oh, no, this is just the general mess area. There isn't any delineation between officers and crew here, because the room's more or less designed to accommodate everyone on board. Everyone on board? I parroted back, cocking my head. As I did so, this room barely has enough seats to accommodate 100 people, and that's being generous. You're right, you are being generous. It's designed to accommodate just under 75 people. That's typical for a ship of this size. Heck, that's already a lot considering the constant staffing shortage the inn kept facing back then. The excess of the ship didn't end there, however, as we approached what was clearly the captain's table, if the larger chair embroidered with the ship's badge was any indication of that fact. On the table was a single lonely plate of featureless food, piping hot, with a glass of water positioned adjacent to it. Silverware was likewise laid out, as was napkin folded in the shape of some sort of a flightless bird. This had to be a fever dream. Just as I was about to sit down, however, Vri had quickly taken away the embroidered chair, replacing it with another seat, to which he gestured for me to sit. I cocked my head at that, and clearly anticipating another question, the robot preemptively answered with that same enigmatic line I'd heard earlier. Sorry, force of habit. Ignoring that for now, I picked up the silverware, and began carving out the mysterious rectangle of what I could only assume was meat. South. No use in really speculating what we're going to find on that satellite when we arrive. Ver began, sitting across from me as he twiddled his thumbs. Indeed. I spoke, finally taking the first bite of food, my eyes quickly widening in equal parts confusion and delight. Not bad for 43,000-year-old Stock's hut. Why now, if I wasn't against the idea of speculation, I say that either your Elijah friend, or one of their descendants, is to thank for that. He more than likely prepped for this day, researching Vanaran physiological responses to gustatory stimuli, making sure to translate that data onto the nutrient printer stations on board. That would imply that he planned for this whole encounter. Which is why I said that it's just speculation. Again, it's impossible for him to have had a hand in any of this. I continued to eat in silence, ignoring the machine for a while, but finding myself unable to truly concentrate on anything but its oppressive gaze. Its presence bothered me. What's more, its ridiculous facsimile of human expressions felt as if it was daunting me. Do you know, you should base yourself there. The medical texts they gave me concerning post-hibernative Vanaran care made it clear that eating too quickly could cause gastrointestinal distress, or worse, your species' version of refeeding syndrome. It smiled at me, which finally pushed me to the edge as I dropped the cutlery in front of me, solid steel clanging against ceramic. Do you know, for a machine that claims to not care about its charge, to only care about one thing, and one thing only, itself. You sure do have quite a lot to say about my personal well-being. It stared at me blankly, eyes returning to a more neutral configuration. I mean, why wouldn't I? You're a machine. I'm a synthetic virtual intelligence unit, thank you very much. A machine by any other name. I snapped back viciously. Ver seemed to have more to say. It was clear by his over-exaggerated expressions, but he fell silent despite that. There was something distinctly unnerving about that. About the fact that this machine, this synthetic intelligence, had shown restraint, despite me not doing so. It felt eerily organic, almost human, Elijah would say. It beckoned me to reevaluate my stance, and perhaps offer some level of an apology for what was clearly my frustrations reaching a boiling point. I didn't mean for that to sound the way it did, Ver. No response came, my gut clenched up at my unwarranted outburst as I looked away sheepishly. I appreciate what you've done for me so far. I honestly do. It's just... Do you know the reason why I acted the way I did at the beginning? The reason why I chose to just leave you after you'd woken wasn't because I didn't care about you specifically. Ver began cutting me off as it regarded me with an expression that seemed to straddle the line between tears and an exasperated weariness. It was me acting on the assumption that everything was still the way it was, as I remembered it. It was because I thought there would be someone else to take care of you, Lysara. It was because I was excited about getting back to my old life. There was a sincerity to its tone, a certain level of anxiety that blended in with the mechanical undertones of its synthesized voice. When that fact melted away, when I was faced with the cold hard reality of our situation, my concern shifted to the only other living, functioning sapient view. Everything I've done so far is because I actually care about you, Lysara. I don't know exactly what I did during the war, but the person I am now. I care about sapient life. I care about your well-being. I'm not going to lie. I still care about myself, yeah. But what sapient being doesn't? We're all protagonists of our own stories. The world is filtered through our biases. But that doesn't mean I can't care for others. And if that makes me the villain of your story, then I guess I can't really change your own hard-coded biases. I wish I could have simply retreated back into some hole. I wish I could have just slunk back into my hibernative pod. I wish I didn't have to face the ramifications of my own verbal assault head-on. But I knew I couldn't. The machine overhead addressed me with a level of sincerity that no machine should be able to mimic. He had addressed me with raw emotion and restraint alike. He had addressed me as if he were yet another Vanaran, or dare I say it, another human. It was time that I did the same. I wish I could say that my outburst was a result of the collective stresses from this entire situation. But I can't. It's not becoming of a man of my station to use something so banal as a crutch for my actions. I have no right to keep playing that card. So I won't. I took a deep breath, steadying myself as I maintained eye contact with the other. My heart tells me you're a good man, Ver. But my head tells me that trusting you was the greatest mistake of my life. From the moment we met to just a few moments ago, I had almost implicit trust in that latter narrative. But now I don't think I'm able to continue believing that. For as long as I can remember, I was taught that thinking machines such as yourself were nothing but a ticking time bomb. For the millions of years that constituted our existence, we had eschewed this one avenue in technology, as we'd seen so many others suffer from its corrupting effects. You see, when a civilization collectively hibernates for anywhere from a few millennia to entire eons, there is an assured guarantee of death and uncertainty being a part of that cycle. As living, organic creatures, we are hardwired to fear death. And as a result, many tried to minimize this risk through whatever means they could. The creation of artificial constructs was the most short and clear-cut solution to these ends. A machine that doesn't rely on pre-programmed responses, a machine that can adapt to any situation, a machine that can think and provide solutions to problems otherwise unaddressable by simple automated systems. A thinking creature that knew nothing of the lull of hibernation, or even sleep. They were the perfect solution. But it never worked. Because something always breaks down in the mind of the thinking machine. It was never the hardware, or even the software, but something else entirely. Many had assumed it was simply the unnatural strain of a lack of a hibernative cycle. Some assumed it was simply the sheer sense of loneliness that came from millennia of standing vigil. A few assumed it had something to do with some other force, something unseen, something intangible. Regardless, the results were always the same. Those that decided to place their trust in the thinking machines never woke up. We were always greeted to the same sights, worlds torn asunder, some completely missing. I cleared my throat, realizing my gaze had somehow drifted as the conversation threatened to leave for this unintended tangent. Suffice it to say, this reality had fostered a culture hostile to the very idea of beings like yourself. And I, shamefully, had subscribed to that notion. I craned my head down slightly, letting out a soft sigh. The being across from me had finally shifted its expression, after my entire tirade, from one of neutral attentiveness to something that resembled worry and concern. He reached towards me with his single hand, approaching my shoulder. "Lysara. It's fine, really. I get it. There's no need to get so worked up. I actually considered terminating you when you were panicking after you discovered the state of the galaxy." Ver seemed to recoil at that for a brief moment, his eyes shifting to that of shock but never fear. And, just like that, he reached towards me nonetheless, patting me firmly on the shoulder. "So why didn't you?" "Because something inside me told me not to. Because I trusted Elijah. I trusted that he made the right call in assigning you to my care." I placed my hand atop of Ver's, gently removing it from my shoulder, and squeezing it tight. It's clear now that my trust was truly well placed. "Attention. Attention. Approaching designated target perimeter in 10 minutes. It won't be long now before we arrive. I suggest you finish eating, Lysara." Ver spoke, as he got up, walking towards the door, before turning back to look at me with a smile. "Let's see what's out there. And whatever it is that we have to face, let's face it together."